Bonus points if you can name the show that I just ripped off by starting with the slur. Hint, it's my favorite show of all time, and it's a late night show, although I technically just ripped off the late morning episodic version of it that's been going on lately. Bonus points if you can name that. As you can see, I'm a bit out of practice. I haven't done a live stream in how long now? I apologize. I have been going through the things in life past couple months. A lot of hard stuff, dark stuff. Don't want to. Maybe I'll do an episode in the future getting into it, letting you guys know. But I am back. I plan to be back every Wednesday for you guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you're here, whether you're seeing this live as we speak or in the future. If you are seeing it in the future, please comment. That's the best thing you can do for the algorithm. And yeah, just start tuning in every Wednesday, 8:30. That is the plan to be here. I am Stelman Smith Jr. With me is John Dunphy. John, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Was that a good enough pause?
No, it was radio silence, which is technically a bad thing.
You told me before you wanted me to pause.
That's not the conversation we had at all. What I said was, speaking of ripping off other channels, I said we should steal the Braxton Hunter Brad Jonathan Pritchard thing. I should say I'm Stelman Smith Jr. And when I pause, you come and say, and I'm John Dunphy. But that was misunderstood. Anyway, listen.
I was going to make a comment, but I refrained about a different channel.
Sure. Yes. By the way, if you do want to leave a comment, tag at Trinity Radio, just because it'll be hilarious if they start seeing their name tagged in a bunch of comment sections for other videos. They're like, what is this? Anyway, all the pitter-patter aside, today we are responding to actually a few videos from Jordan Peterson. Obviously, the original one was, I think it was created about a year ago when he appeared with Dennis Prager, and of the viral clip talking about belief in God. We're going to play that full clip here, and then we're going to play some other clips to complement it, some that have occurred more recently. And yeah, this isn't a refutation of his claims. I think I agree primarily with all of what he says. However, I think it falls just short of what the gospel of Jesus Christ ultimately has to offer us as a solution to the very problem he's bringing up. And so that's why I titled this video, What I Wish Jordan Peterson Knew About Belief in God, because I think he's right. And Jordan, if not that you would ever see a small YouTube channel like this, but if you ever do see this, just know this is coming from a place of love. I want to see you saved. And I agree with everything you're saying on this, but I think it falls just short of the solution that is what the gospel message is all about. So John, have you seen the clips that we're going to look at?
I have not, because I do not prepare for anything. Just kidding. I do prepare for my videos, but channels that are less important, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Where am I?
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, John is going to keep an eye on the comment section. We plan to talk about the subject matter for about a half hour, then move to Q&A after that. So yeah, I guess without too much introduction, I'm just going to play the first clip of Jordan Peterson. The first one I think is the longest one. It's about 5 minutes. And obviously I'm not going to respond to everything that's in the clip. If you want to see a thorough response to everything that's in this first clip I'm going to play, there is a video in the description that Braxton Hunter did on Trinity Radio. I would highly suggest you check out that video if you want to respond to all of this. My response in this video is going to focus just on one specific aspect, and this is the idea of belief in statement versus belief in action. So let me play this whole clip, and then we will move on from there. So actually, John, as I'm bringing this in here, why don't you say something to the audience?
Yeah, I'm going to be the pessimist and say that probably Jordan Peterson will not see this. And no, we will not be interviewing him because it apparently costs $50,000 to interview him.
Well, I haven't heard that anywhere. But anyway, all right.
I thought I heard that from him himself, from Crowder. Oh no,
okay.
it's so. I don't know. Play the clip.
Okay. Yes, I'm playing the clip now.
You have said on a number of occasions, and on every occasion that I have watched you say it, not a single person in the panel, you often talk on panels, not one person has ever actually reacted to it. I totally get it. Nevertheless, it's one of the most important things you regularly say. You live as if there is a God. Is that correct?
Well, people ask me if I believe in God. You know, I'm going to release a podcast about that because I answered that question for about 2 hours in Australia because people kept asking me that question, which I really don't like. I don't like that question. And so I sat and thought about it for a good while, and I tried to figure out why. And then I thought, well, you believe. I thought, who would have the audacity to claim that they believed in God if they examined the way they lived? Who would dare say that? To believe, to believe in a Christian sense, to actually, this is why Nietzsche said there was only ever one Christian, and that was Christ. To have the audacity to claim that means that you live it out fully. And that's an unbearable task in some sense. I just debated Slavoj Žižek about a week ago, although it wasn't really much of a debate. It was a strange event. But he said something very brilliant, and to me, that justified the entire event, at least from my perspective. He talked about Christ's moment of crisis on the cross when he cried out to God that he had been forsaken. And what Žižek said was that what that meant was that the conditions of human existence are so tragic that even God himself in human form lost faith for a moment in the goodness of being. And I thought that was a remarkable observation because, well, if God himself would lose faith under such conditions, what would you expect from normal human beings confronted with what we're confronted by? And to be able to accept the structure of existence, the suffering that goes along with it, and the disappointment and the betrayal, and to nonetheless act properly, right? To aim at the good with all your heart, right? To dispense with the malevolence and your desire for destruction and revenge and all of that, and to face things courageously and to tell the truth, to speak the truth and to act it out. That's what it means to believe. That's what it means. It doesn't mean to state it. It means to act it out. And unless you act it out, you should be very careful about claiming it. And so I've never been comfortable saying anything other than I try to act as if God exists, because God only knows what you'd be if you truly believed. I mean, if you think about it in some sense, that's the central idea in Christianity, is that if you were capable of believing, it would be a transfiguring event, a truly transfiguring event. And I know people experience that to one degree or another, but we have no idea what the limit of that is. And we have no idea what the possibility is within each person if they lived a life that was maximally courageous and maximally truthful. You know, because maybe you're running at 60% or 70% or 20% and at cross purposes to yourself. God only knows what you'd be if you believed. And so, well, I try to act like I believe, but I'd never claim that I manage it, because it's a lot to manage properly. And you have to be careful about claiming to manage things that you can't manage. And so that's part of the answer to that question.
So, yeah, a lot there. Obviously, some of the stuff about the debate with Zizek I really like, but that's not going to be the purposes of this video. But the basic idea there is belief is action. And I think there's something right about that. People can say all day they believe in God. How many people say they're a Christian and don't live in a way that would reflect that? And that there is an idea like that in the Gospels about bearing fruit. Faith without works is dead, the Bible tells us. So you could just rephrase that to what he's saying. Belief without acting it out is dead. And so I think that's right. Now, it's missing something, and we're going to bring in some more context here. But before I move on, John, what would you like to say?
Yeah. So as Lewis talks about, there's two types of faith: the intellectual, knowing, and then what follows from there. Because if your actions do not really, this is what true hypocrite is. If your actions do not correspond to what you believe, because what you believe about reality, if your deliberations are completely opposite of that, it doesn't matter if you believe. And that's why I wouldn't say God loses faith. He just knows that some people won't believe. And because of his common grace, he allows their existence and allows them to experience the goodness of life. But I love Ephesians 4:13. Until we reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. And what that means is you live by the example of Christ. And, I do martial arts, and my senseis, they are the authority in that dojo, and I lead by their example, and that's what Christ is. And as he said before, only Christ is maximally courageous, maximally good. But you are to reflect that, and that's what sanctification is called. We're to reflect that in faith. Because to get deep here, I've had conversations with people on deep levels, and then they did the complete opposite of what we talked about in an almost malicious way. And you do meet those hypocrites who say they believe one thing and then literally do the complete opposite. And that's why Christ is always to be our example and not people like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so when he's talking about I never claim to believe because having that transformation in your life. If one claims to be a Christian and then they act self-righteous and all of this, that's most certainly what he is talking about.
Yeah. And so, before I move on with the clips, I want to say
he's talking about the Pharisees. My bad. I just wanted to say that as well.
That's okay. He's taking it more seriously than some blatant Christians, I would say, even take it, because he's going further than just saying, well, there's people out there who claim to follow Christ but clearly don't really follow Christ. There's people who, do malicious things and use the name of Christ to do it. He's going beyond those people and saying, even us who do have it in our hearts to follow Christ, as you're saying, as the example, if we truly examined where we fall short of that, if we truly examined our private thoughts, if we were honest about all of the darkness in ourselves, even trying to follow Christ as the fundamental example, if we were honest with that, we should, even us Christians, should be careful to be claiming that and waving the banner on behalf of Christianity when those dark parts of us can come out and people can see them. And what kind of example does that set? So he's going even further to say, hey, even if you are following Christ as your main example, still be careful about that claim, because there's all sorts of parts of you that are dark and hidden, and those parts of you certainly aren't acting out what you profess to believe.
Well, also the reverse, you said faith produces good works. Well, the opposite would be your good works, the step to one of the main things of realizing before one becomes a Christian is realizing your good works are dead without faith, without that knowledge, without those metaphysics, without all that's entailed, because they're ultimately meaningless, and you're probably doing it for some form of self-pride.
Yeah.
Or some form of recognition, usually. Yeah.
So hold that thought, because that is where we're going to come full circle. So right here is just the point where I'm echoing what Jordan Peterson is saying. I'm resonating with it. I'm agreeing with it. Apparently I'm annoying, according to someone in the comment section. Fair enough. Yes, I told you I was out of practice coming into this. But as we progress here, again, this is where I think Jordan Peterson is missing something fundamental here. and that is what we're going to bring in. So both of these clips are identically titled. So let me make sure. I'm really hoping I bring in the correct one here.
Annoying is subjective, by the way, because to online atheist trolls who are annoying to me, when you speak philosophy, they get really annoyed, or when you use actual logic, they get really annoyed. So
yeah. So actually, I'm going to remove that. I did click the wrong one. My apologies here. Which one did I click? Did I click the bottom? I apologize here for the technical difficulties. Like I said, both these are identically claimed, so it's throwing me off a bit. Yeah, I just did the same one. Okay. I apologize. I got the right one this time. All right. And so now he's going to give 3 reasons in this clip why he doesn't like the question, do you believe in God? I do want to apologize real quick, because in the first answer, there's just a bit of mild language. Don't mind that. But I want you to pay very close attention to what he says as the 3rd reason why he doesn't like the question, what do you believe in God? So let's listen.
So then the question came to me, do I believe in God? And I don't like that question. And people have complained at me a lot, and I'm sure they have their reasons because they don't like my answers, and I have 2 answers. They've kind of become stock, which is not a good thing. But they're the best approximate. I can't figure out why I don't like the question exactly. I've got 3. I had 3 sort of burgeoning hypotheses. One was, it's none of your damn business. That's the first one. So it's like a privacy issue. Like, it seemed to me to be a question that was too private to be answered properly. And so, you could consider that a cop-out, and maybe it is. And then another one was, well, what do you mean by believe? Like, do you mean the words? Do you mean to say the words, I believe in God? Does that indicate that you believe in God? Like, I don't know what you mean by believe exactly, because, and that's got me in trouble too, because, people think that attempting to clarify the meaning of words is an attempt to escape from the question, when it's actually an attempt to specify the question. I mean, is what you believe what you say, or what you act out? Now, I would say to some degree it's both, but if push comes to shove, as far as I'm concerned, what you
can I say
you
something?
act out, not what you say. And then, and if you're an integrated,
Go for it.
I like what he said there, is believe what you intellectually hold or what you act out. And
Yeah.
in the context of, let's say, love, St. Paul does not give us feelings inside the head, warm butterflies. He gives us a list of virtues, habits. So I always say, in order to fall in love, you have to be loving. So your love is literally demonstrated through action, not just words.
Mm.
And those, at the end of the day, philosophy is great, but if you just have a bunch of propositions in your head and you don't do anything with that mentally, even emotionally and or pragmatically, it's just a hobby. And philosophy as just a hobby is no longer love of wisdom.
Yeah.
person, then what you act out and what you say are the same thing. And then you're a person whose word can be trusted, right? Because what you say and what you do are isomorphic. They're the same thing. But belief is instantiated in action. So I have also suggested that I act as if I believe in God, or to the best of my ability. And people aren't very happy with that either. And then the third is that I'm afraid that he might exist, which I think is the most comical of the three answers and perhaps the most accurate one. But then,
yeah, so we're gonna stop it there. So the last one, yeah. So his second answer was he echoed some of what was in that original clip with Dennis Prager. And then the third answer is he's terrified that God might exist. Now, think about that in contrast to what he just said. So he basically laid out something that you and I, John, are agreeing with, that true belief is you're going to see that in what you act out. So you can state propositions all day long. You can say, well, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. You can say, I'm not afraid of X, but if maybe you avoid it all the time. Well, you're really afraid of it, and you're just saying things. You're not actually acting out what you believe.
This is why
And
Christianity is so awesome compared to other religions, because other religions are just a bunch of propositions, and, do some good works for salvation, while Christianity is the one religion where the truth, belief, metaphysics, and ethics are correspond in the Incarnation. So you have the truth himself who demonstrates how to live out the truth. The Father represents the wisdom, or the Son represents the wisdom of the Father in their loving relationship. You have that in no other worldview or religion, which is so cool. That wisdom has how you should live has metaphysical grounding, bedding, versus other religions. Because Islam is let's be real. Islam comes down to God says so. That's just a simple way of saying divine command theory, like extreme divine command theory.
Yeah. So going back, so you have to live it out, right? And if you're not living it out, it's like the tree that doesn't bear fruit. It's like, well, do you really believe? Are you really a Christian? Do you really believe in God? If you're not living that, are you really a Christian if you're not living that Christian life? But then he adds to it, I'm terrified that God might exist. Now,
I don't know the context of that, so I don't really want to comment too much on that.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to play another clip where he says something to that effect. And so this is, if you start putting the puzzle pieces together, I want you to consider the weight that Jordan Peterson, I think, is putting on himself, which is, if he's terrified God might exist, well, why? Because God will judge him on his works. And if God judges him on his works, that's why he's terrified. That's why he doesn't want to just say, I believe in God. He wants to say, I try and act as though God existed. And remember how he ended the original clip. He said, but I would never claim I manage it, because you have to be very careful about claiming to manage things that you can't manage. And so it seems to me that Jordan Peterson has put this tremendous weight on himself that, hey, if I'm going to believe in God, I need to act this out, because I'm going to be judged by God on how well I acted out. And that's why he quoted Nietzsche and saying there's only ever one real Christian. That was Christ. Because if you being a Christian is fundamentally defined on you acting it out fully, well, then of course Christ could only be the only real Christian. Now, of course, John, you and I know how we want to come back to that. But I don't know if you want to say something without giving it all away before I play these final clips.
Yeah, the whole maintaining, yeah, that's the word. That's what's cool about Christianity, because maintaining is salvation by works. And we know what Paul ultimately says about those who live by the law. Galatians 5:12. Read that if you want to understand my joke there. But yeah, I agree with him. I'd be scared too if the way to salvation and what was maintaining that, because without that authority, without that, I like using sensei. That's a great analogy, I think, for one's relationship to God. God is like the best sensei. As
Yeah.
jokingly as that is, I think that has many good apologetic points.
Yeah. So I have two more clips to play. And this is the most recent one. And when you watch this clip and you watch how emotional Jordan Peterson gets, I think this gives us a lot of Christians who have been watching him for years and wanting him to go the extra mile, wanting him to go from the brilliant insight he has into the Bible. I mean, I'm ever grateful for some of the insight he's showed to me into the Bible. But those of us who have been watching him, wanting him to really become a Christian, this kind of clip we really like to see, because you start to see that manifesting in his life.
So you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and the critic, this particular critic, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did
it's not
that.
true.
But
check Inspiring Philosophy.
The difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine, you can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world, but the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that in principle is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to, that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too, partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
So, yeah, again, that very last sentence echoed what he said before. What would happen to you if you truly believed it? It would be a transfiguring event. And of course, this is why Paul says, talks about works being the evidence of the faith, because that transformation of the heart has to come first. But again, he echoes this point about it's so terrifying to believe. And again, I think it's because he views it as this way of, if I believe it, I have to act it out fully. And if I'm not acting it out fully, that's a terrifying thought because, well, God's not going to judge me merely on the good things I did, the positive ways in which I acted out, but also on the negative ways that I didn't act that out. Now, Jordan, if I'm misrepresenting you at all, I apologize. That's not my intention. That's just how it seems to me watching these clips. And then now this is where, before I play the last clip, this is where I want to add what I think the gospel's answer to that problem is, if you truly believe, and it's a matter of the heart, right? If you trust on Christ, if you acknowledge, I don't live it out fully, and you put your faith on Christ and say, but Christ, I know you lived it out fully, you suffered and you took the punishment in my place. Whatever aspect you might be terrified of God judging you on, the negative aspects of not living it out fully, Christ took that punishment. And when we put our faith on Christ and we stand before God, when we eventually meet God and we stand before him and we're to be judged, if we put our faith on Christ, we're not going to be judged on how well we acted out what we claim to believe. We're going to be judged on what Christ acted out. And so, Jordan, if you believe that quote, that Christ was the true Christian and says that he acted it out fully, then that's amazing to know that that's what we'll be judged on when we stand before God. We're not going to be judged on whether or not we acted it out partially or to what degree we were able to do that, but we're going to be judged on Christ acting it out fully. That's what the gospel message, that's the solution to the problem, is we put our faith on Christ, and that's what we're judged on, is him living it out fully because we couldn't. And I'll add a little bit more context to that with the last clip, but John, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, he seems to be talking a lot about experiential knowledge of God, which seems to be his focus instead of the epistemological, like, do you believe that God exists? Do you believe metaphysically that God exists? And he hasn't really addressed that part, and I think he probably hasn't addressed it because he would probably argue that psychologically and experientially, that's what matters to most people. So he probably addresses it from that, probably from what I'm getting at. But, I relate to what he was talking about because I had an experience very few people know about that changed me for the better and gave me a lifestyle I never thought I would have. That came with much choice, but also with the divine providence of God. That whole fun topic to talk about. And, it can be a very powerful experience for some, and then some just don't have that. They just have the gift of faith and don't need experiences for that change and whatnot. So I think he's addressing the question from that experiential level, which would obviously ground the psychological, emotional, all of that with reality, because you're experiencing something about reality. And of course, those who would deny this is why I think metaphysics is important, because without the metaphysics, it's hard to say, is this, well, I think you're not justified for belief, properly basic belief in the experience of God, and belief in God in general. Sorry, I thought my neighbor was doing something.
It's okay.
No, it's just a loud motorcycle. What was I saying? Oh, the metaphysics is important because the naturalists will come along and give you that alternative. They probably won't defend it, but they'll give you that alternative possibility, like naturalistic pantheism or something like that. So that's why I think the metaphysics is helpful, because that gives you even more backing for your experience. Ultimately, most do not become Christian because of the metaphysics, but the experience, which is a form of knowledge, not just believing what you know ain't so, or you had a warm fuzzy feeling, but an experience that relates to your life and just connects a whole bunch of dots that you had missing. And that's why I think a lot of people just miss when people say, I had an experience. Of course, that's so vague, because some people just, I went to a Christian concert and I felt the presence of God. Then some people literally had an experience that changed them for the better, and just gives them a much stronger belief in God. And
that's the transfiguring event he's talking about.
Yeah, and not all of that experience that. The metaphysics is just helpful, and then people just get their crap together, and then some people, God graciously gives some experiences that help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's some more stuff I want to say, but for context, I do want to just play this one last clip here, because I have some overlays to share on this one as well.
And then the other line is, not all those who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Got that about right? Which means something approximating, just because you make a claim to moral virtue, let's say, your belief in God, I can't see how you can make a higher claim to moral virtue than that. Agnostic, atheistic, I don't really care. The point is something like this. Imagine something of ultimate transcendent value. I don't care whether you believe in it or not, but imagine that something like that exists. And then you swear allegiance to it, which is to say, I believe in this. There's a heavy moral burden that comes along with that, just to allow yourself to utter the words without feeling that you should be immediately struck down appropriately by lightning. And so I think that's why that question makes me uncomfortable.
So here I have this, and this is again going back to where we kind of started off with this. I have this first verse. It's Matthew 7:21, what he just quoted. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Again, so not everyone who claims to believe in God or not everyone who claims to believe in God is a true Christian, but who? The one who does the will of my Father in heaven. In other words, the one who acts it out. And this is that's again a profound point. And I think we need to take it seriously.
So I have a very helpful distinction here. I just call this strong libertarianism. Go to my boy Aristotle, where most people think your actions are your free will acts, while really it's the deliberation of the mind, the deliberation of the heart. And when you make those deliberations, that is the real choice, because that's when you start planning out, okay, how am I going to plan this out? How am I going to plan that out? And that's when you become a lot more aware of things. So in your heart, which means the center of your mind, the focus, you did not do the will of my Father. I never knew you, because I was never part of your heart, your mind. I was never the focus. I was never your authority in that area. And now that's where I'm. And from there, because good faith would be that full deliberation on God. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, heart, and strength. That's the law summed up in those two commandments. And if your deliberations are on those commandments, then the law follows from there, and that's the good works. And the people who don't live that out, they know the theology, they know it, but they don't have faith. They don't believe. That's the action. That is the deliberation on God.
Yeah.
I've met people who I still care about, but have done things completely opposite of the conversations, that took place, and it's shocking. It's like, geez, really, I never knew you type deal. It's quite the interesting experience once you have those experiences, but that's just part of deliberation, in Christ.
Yeah. But so I'm going to bring this back up because this is what he quoted, and he's correct, right? But this is verse 21. I want to bring in verses 22 and 23 because I think you'll notice something very interesting, and it's the reason why this can't be the entire story. There has to be something slightly more to it. So, right, very next verse, it says, "On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." So look at this, because the original verse is, it's not everyone who just claims belief enters the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father. But then what's their reply to him? But God, we acted it out. We prophesied in your name. We cast out demons in your name. We did many mighty works in your name. In other words, we didn't just say it, we acted it out. That's the rebuttal to him. It's not he says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord. And they said, but we didn't just say, Lord, Lord. We prophesied in your name. We cast out demons in your name. We did many mighty works in your name. We acted it out. So this is where works being the evidence of faith, it's right, but it has to be the result of a genuinely changed heart. And this is why it's important when Jordan Peterson talks about the transfiguring event. What do the works represent? Do the works represent, I just want status? I just want people to look at me and recognize me, but it doesn't reflect anything genuine in my heart? Or are you acting it out because it's genuine, because God has genuinely transformed your heart and you want to live that way? When it says, Paul says that, Abraham believed and it was credited as righteousness. So did Abraham have to act it out fully to be credited as righteousness, or did he believe and it was accredited to him as righteousness? He believed. It was that faith. It was that genuine transformation of Abraham's heart, and that reality that Abraham was now going to be judged on what Jesus would act out, not what he was able to act out. When you look at Habakkuk, it's 2:4, I have it written down, the righteous shall live by faith. The righteous shall live by faith. It doesn't say the righteous acted out perfectly, and that's why they're righteous. The righteous live by faith. In other words, they live a life of their heart. God is at the center of their heart, and that's why they're acting out. That's why they're even able to act it out to the degree they are, because they put their faith first in God, and then God enables them. So, yeah, that's what I would want to add.
Well, the greatest commandment isn't faith. What do you think about that? What is the greatest commandment?
To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind.
And, Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, love is this, love is that, love is not this, love is not that. Love, faith, hope, love, but the strongest of these is love, or the greatest of these. And I'm not saying, real love corresponds to faith and hope, but ultimately, I think real faith is just love for God. Ultimately,
yeah,
it's the change of the mind, because love is truthful. So there's that. You gotta have the intellectual virtues. You gotta know what's true. You gotta want to know what's true. It's all these virtues and all these ways you should be living, and it starts with the mind, and those focused on God, as both metaphysics and ethics. Connects belief and action very well. And, Christianity makes it much easier than any other worldview or religion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Christianity is the only problem to it. I mean, if the problem we present ourselves with is, hey, if I'm going to claim belief in this, I have to act it out fully. Well, who acts it out fully? What human being has ever acted it out fully apart from Christ, but of course he wasn't merely a human being. He was a human being and God. What mere human being acts it out?
Well,
We're all doomed if that's the case.
this is the mystery of the incarnation, and by mystery I don't mean believing things on speculation or on that blind faith, but rather it's justified, but there's just some things we can't know. I won't say fathom, because to say you can't fathom something is to say it's impossible to know, but right now we just don't know, is could Christ have failed? Because, you know, you got the one heresy, I forget what's called, but basically that is where God just enters into, basically the soul of Christ will just be a godly soul, or, you know, divine soul. But no, to be fully human, you have to have the mind, soul, and body of a human being. You know, that's what God took on. So it's like, if Christ has the mind of a human, could he have failed? And that is an interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah, but so yeah. So
But
we
he
are coming
didn't.
to, yeah, no, he didn't. That's it. That we
Yeah.
know that. We agree on that without, yeah, I'm at this point we're coming to the closing minute, so I don't want to delve into an off topic like that, although we should discuss it in future episodes, because that's the other, you know, part that Peterson, you know, when he referenced the Slavoj Žižek debate, I actually would like to do another video getting into that topic. But yeah, so really to sum up for this video, Jordan Peterson presents a problem. The reason he doesn't like, and I've always defended Jordan Peterson on this when people have said he's just dodging the question, he just doesn't want to, he's being dishonest, he doesn't want to answer. I've always defended, and I've just said he just takes it that seriously. He just takes it more seriously than really even any Christian I know has taken that question, and that's why he treats it the way he does, and he tries to act it out the best he can. And I think that would be a problem if, when we face God, we're judged on what we acted out. The beauty of the gospel is that we can act it out perfectly. That now acting out is important. I'm not saying acting out isn't important. It is important because it's the evidence that God is the center of our life, that we are truly looking to him as a role model, that we are truly following him. It's the evidence that he has actually come into our hearts and transformed us. So that's what acting it out is. It's the evidence of that. But the evidence is never going to manifest perfectly in our lives. And so if we're judged on that, it's always going to be lacking. As it says, all have fallen short of the glory of God. And so Jordan Peterson highlights a brilliant point, which is there has to be evidence of what the person is claiming to believe. But the beauty of the gospel is that in the absence of our ability to act it out fully, if we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who did act it out fully, we'll be judged on the merits of his works, not our own. And that's why God can welcome us into heaven. So those are my closing points. John, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, just the whole gospel thing, you know, man cannot act out. You know, the Pharisees attempted. Islam is basically the reattempt, the reattemption of that, and with bad metaphysics and other things, and, you know, polytheistic religions. Just a lot of Eastern religions have a lot of true wisdom, but then they don't have the metaphysics, and without that, it ultimately becomes pharisaical as well. So yeah, the good works of man is dead without faith, but Christ came. I do like Saint Athanasius on this. I won't say we become gods, but we become like God. We'll remain in the image of God in that likeness, and because of Christ coming down to give the example for us, because we clearly could not become that example from the commands, but rather God gives us the law. We try and act it out by our own admission and merits, and then he ultimately says, "Yeah, I will show you how it's done," and then he does, and resurrects and all that good stuff. The whole gospel story. I'm trying to remember what my end point was.
It's okay. I'll just
we become conformed to the image of Christ as well,
Mhm.
and that follows from the wisdom that Christ demonstrates through how he lived his life, by example, and all that.
Yeah. So great. So again, I know you're the pessimist here. I'm going to try my hardest to be the optimist and hope Jordan Peterson sees this one day. Jordan, if you see this, I love you. I hope you get saved. I pray. And then this is genuine. This isn't just me, grandstanding or just, trying to look good. I genuinely pray for you and your family every night, along with all the people I pray for, because, especially knowing what you've gone through recently, I'm glad and grateful God has kept you through it. So yeah, again, if you're seeing this video after the fact, not live, comment. That's the best thing you could do for the algorithms. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you'd like to see in future episodes. The way you can support this mystery and this channel is subscribestart.com/TUA. John, how can people best support you?
By not supporting you and giving me your money on because I'm the only one supporting you. So really, if they support me, I support you. Patreon, JMD Apologetics 101, or you can merch shop. I need to do more stuff with that. Or super chatting, but like
this show officially brought to you by CTTA Apologetics.
Yes.
All right. Enough of that. Until next time, thank you. Genuinely, thank you everybody for tuning in. I know it's been a long time since I've been on. I'm grateful for everyone who's here, who stuck with the channel. And again, tune in Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll see you guys next Wednesday. God bless.